Doctors laughed at the one-legged ER nurse because they thought her limp told the whole story. They saw a temporary nurse, a prosthetic leg, and a woman too quiet to fight back. They did not see the battlefield she had survived. That night rain hammered the glass outside Mercy Haven Medical Center, while a wounded stranger screamed in Trauma Bay 2 like he was still trapped in a war zone. 3 men could not hold him down. The attending doctor ordered sedation. Then Mara Ellison stepped forward, placed one hand on his shoulder, and the room went silent. The man looked at her and whispered, "Ghost Falcon." Minutes later, black SUVs surrounded the hospital. Stay with this story because what happens next is not just about survival, it is about the people we underestimate. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. Before those black SUVs filled the ambulance bay with white headlights and military shadows, Mara Ellison had been just another nurse at the end of another brutal shift. At least that was what Mercy Haven Medical Center believed. The hospital sat 3 blocks from the Charleston waterfront, its glass face shining through sheets of November rain. Wind pushed hard off the harbor and rattled the emergency entrance every few minutes, bringing in the smell of wet asphalt, salt air, and ambulance exhaust. Inside, the ER moved the way it always moved when the weather turned mean. Too fast, too loud, too crowded. People arrived hurt, frightened, drunk, feverish, bleeding, or all of those things at once. Mara had been on her feet since 3 in the afternoon. Her right leg ached where the prosthetic socket pressed too tightly against skin already rubbed raw by a 12-hour shift. She had adjusted the fit twice in the supply room, standing behind a half-closed door, with one hand on the shelf, and her jaw locked until the worst of the pain passed. Then she had gone back out, because Room 7 needed discharge papers. Room 10 needed a second IV attempt, and the elderly man in hall bed 3 kept asking for his wife who had died 9 years earlier. Nobody noticed the limp unless they wanted to, and at Mercy Haven people usually wanted to. Mara moved through the nurses' station with a stack of charts tucked under one arm and a cold cup of coffee in the other hand. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight knot at the back of her head. Rain tapped against the high windows. Monitors chirped. Somewhere behind a curtain, a child cried in short, exhausted bursts. At the central desk, Dr. Grant Hollis stood with 2 residents and a tablet in his hand. He looked like the kind of physician hospital brochures liked to print on glossy paper. Tall, silver at the temples, clean. White coat, voice, smooth enough to make bad news, sound like an administrative update. Patients trusted him before he opened his mouth. Administrators loved him because he was efficient, composed, and rarely left a mess that could be traced back to him. Nurses knew a different man. Hollis did not shout. Shouting was for doctors who had lost control. Hollis preferred the smaller weapons. A pause at the wrong moment. A raised brow. A polite thank you that meant stop speaking. A glance toward the residents that turned another person's concern into a teaching example. Mara stepped beside him and placed a chart on the desk. "Mrs. Alvarez in 4 is still complaining of pressure between her shoulders," she said. Her first troponin was negative, but the pain changed after she walked to the bathroom. "I think she needs a repeat EKG before discharge." Hollis did not look at her right away. He finished scrolling on the tablet. Then he lifted his eyes slowly as if granting her a favor. She came in with anxiety and a normal workup. The pain changed. She has been here 4 hours. That does not mean she is safe. One of the residents looked down at his shoes. Hollis gave Mara the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Nurse Ellison, I appreciate your caution. I will decide when my patient is ready to go home." His patient. Mara heard the possessive note. Everyone did. She held his gaze for 1 second longer than comfort allowed. "Then please document that you declined the repeat EKG after a change in symptoms." The smile thinned. For a moment the air around the desk tightened. Tessa Monroe, the charge nurse, looked up from the staffing board. Tessa had been at Mercy Haven for 14 years, and had survived every kind of doctor the building could produce. She was broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, and too tired to waste words. Her gaze moved from Hollis to Mara, then back again. Hollis lowered the tablet. "Order the EKG," he said to the nearest resident. "Let us ease Nurse Ellison's concern." The resident moved quickly. Mara picked up her coffee and walked away before Hollis could add anything else. She did not feel like she had won. Winning was not the word for making someone do the thing they should have done before they were challenged. Winning was for people with room to celebrate. Mara had learned long ago that being right in a hospital was only useful if someone acted in time. At the medication room, she pushed the door open with her hip and stepped inside. For 7 seconds, she let her face change. The pain in her leg climbed in a slow, hot line up her thigh. She braced one hand against the counter and breathed through her nose. A fluorescent light buzzed overhead. On the wall, a laminated poster reminded staff to lift with their legs, not their backs. Mara almost laughed at that, but the sound died before it became anything. The door opened behind her. Tessa entered carrying a tray of labeled syringes. "You pushed him hard," Tessa said. "I pushed the chart. You pushed him." Mara straightened. She needed the EKG. She did. Tessa set the tray down and studied her. "You okay?" "I am fine." "That is not an answer. It is the one I have." Tessa leaned against the counter. "He treats you like that because he thinks you will take it." Mara checked the medication labels one by one. "He treats everyone like that." "Not everyone." Mara did not respond. Tessa's voice softened just enough to become dangerous. "You know, most people in this place see the agency badge and stop reading. They think it means temporary, replaceable, easy to ignore." Mara slid the tray into place. "Most people are busy. Most people are lazy." That almost brought a smile out of her. "Almost." Tessa watched her adjust her weight from one leg to the other. "You ever get that socket looked at?" Mara's hand stilled. "It is fine. That limp says otherwise. The limp says I am tired. The limp says you have been tired for months." Mara opened the door. "I have patience." Tessa let her go. The ER swallowed Mara again. She moved from room to room with the steady rhythm of someone who had learned to place pain into a locked compartment and keep walking. A construction worker with a nail through his palm. A college freshman vomiting into a plastic basin while his roommate apologized to everyone. A woman with a migraine who kept flinching at the overhead lights. A toddler with croup wrapped in a dinosaur blanket. Mara knew how to enter a room without bringing panic with her. She lowered her voice. She touched shoulders before wrists. She told people what she was doing before she did it. She never promised that everything was fine unless it was. People in pain could forgive fear. They could not forgive a lie. At 10:31, Mrs. Alvarez's repeat EKG came back abnormal. Not dramatic, not the kind of finding that made a room explode into motion. But enough. The resident carried it to Hollis. Hollis looked at it, then at Mara across the desk. Mara was taping an IV line on a dehydrated teenager. She did not look back. Hollis ordered cardiology. No apology followed. She had not expected one. By 11:04, the storm had tightened around the hospital. Thunder rolled low enough to make the window glass tremble. The ambulance bay doors opened and closed every few minutes, coughing rain into the entrance. Staff moved faster. Patients watched the ceiling lights flicker and asked if the power was safe. "It is a hospital," one nurse said. "Backup generators could power a small town." Mara heard that from the supply cart and said nothing. She had seen generators fail. She had seen bright, clean systems become useless because one hidden dependency broke at the wrong moment. She had seen people trust machines because the machines had always worked before. That was the trap. People believed in continuity until the second it ended. A radio crackled at the EMS desk. Tessa turned the volume up. Mercy Haven incoming trauma. Male approximately early 40s. Found near Old Navy Yard Road, no identification. Multiple lacerations. Suspected blunt abdominal trauma. Patient combative. Blood pressure 86/50 and dropping. ETA 4 minutes. The ER changed shape. It always did when trauma was coming. Conversations shortened. The charge board was checked. Curtains were pulled. Someone rolled out suction. Someone else called blood bank. Mara was already moving toward Trauma Bay 2. A young resident named Tyler Benton saw her grab a trauma cart. You heard Tessa assign you number. Then maybe wait. Mara kept moving. Bay 2 is empty. Tyler jogged beside her. Hollis likes Mark on trauma. Mark is in CT with the motorcycle crash. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it. Mara pushed the cart into Trauma Bay 2 and began setting the room. Gloves, saline, pressure bags, airway tray, 2 large bore IV setups. She checked suction with one hand while pulling fresh gauze with the other. Tyler stood near the door watching. You always do that. What set the room like you know what is coming? Mara looked at him. We do know what is coming. Not exactly. Enough. The ambulance doors burst open at 11:16. Rain came in first. Then 2 paramedics, both breathing hard, pushing a gurney that rocked under the force of the man strapped to it. He was not large, not in the way people expected dangerous men to be large. He was lean-soaked and shaking with more than cold. His face was cut near the cheekbone. His left eye was swollen almost shut. Blood darkened the side of his shirt where the fabric had been sliced open. One wrist was restrained. The other had worked half loose from the strap. He screamed as they crossed the threshold. Not a cry, not a groan. A raw, torn sound that made every person in the ER look up. He has been like this since we found him, the lead paramedic said. First sedative barely touched him. He nearly broke Sam's wrist in the rig. The second paramedic had blood on his sleeve. His face was pale. Mara moved to the patient's left side. The man's good eye snapped toward her and away again, scanning corners, doors, ceiling exits. His breath came too fast. His hand pulled against the restraint in a pattern that made her stomach tighten. Not panic alone. Training. Someone had taught him how to test restraints without wasting strength. Hollis entered behind her. What do we have? The paramedic rattled off vitals. No ID. Found near the old access road. Possible hit and run, but the injuries do not look clean. Pressure is dropping. Abdomen rigid. GCS 10 on scene, maybe 9 now. He keeps fighting us. Hollis put on gloves. Sedation. 2 milligrams lorazepam. Fluids wide open. Type and cross. Get ultrasound in here. Mara watched the patient's pupils, his breathing the angle of his shoulders. He flinched when Hollis leaned over him. Flinched again when Tyler reached for the loose restraint. Hold him, Hollis said. 3 staff members moved in. The patient bucked hard. A tray hit the floor. Metal instruments scattered across tile. Someone cursed. The monitor cable pulled loose. The security guard at the door stepped forward, then stopped when the patient twisted with sudden precision and drove an elbow into his forearm. The guard stumbled back. Enough, Hollis snapped. Get him under control. A nurse near the wall whispered, This is insane. Another voice said low but audible. Maybe let the limpin' temp try. She seems to like lost causes. A small laugh followed. Mara heard it. She also heard the pitch in the patient's breathing change when the laugh crossed the room. His panic sharpened. The sound meant something to him. Mockery, threat, men watching, a room closing in. Mara stepped closer. Not fast. Fast movement near a trapped body made things worse. She kept her hands visible and her voice low. Listen to me. The patient thrashed against the strap. You are in Charleston. You are inside Mercy Haven Medical Center. You are hurt, but you are not in the place you think you are." His eye locked on her face for half a second, then slipped away. Hollis looked over. "Nurse Ellison, unless you are holding pressure or starting a line, move." Mara did not move. She lowered her voice further. "No one here is going to interrogate you. No one is taking you to a black room. No one is leaving you behind." The patient's hand slowed. Tyler looked up. Mara saw the opening and took one more step. She placed her palm on the man's shoulder, firm enough to be real, gentle enough not to trap him. "You made it inside," she said. "Stand down." The screaming stopped. The silence hit harder than the noise. The patient stared at her. His lips trembled once before sound came out. "Ghost Falcon," he whispered. "They said you died in Kandahar." Mara's hand stayed where it was. Every part of her training told her to keep breathing, keep her face neutral, keep the room from seeing the wound those words had opened. But for 1 second, the hospital disappeared. There was only dust, heat, rotor wash, a red light pulsing inside a transport bay, someone shouting her call sign through smoke, someone else screaming that the landing zone was burned, her own hands slick with blood that was not hers, the terrible weight of a promise made to men who were supposed to survive. Then Mercy Haven came back. Monitors, rain, Hollis, the patient's shoulder under her palm. Hollis stepped forward, his eyes narrow now. "What did he call you?" Mara removed her hand. "He is delirious." The patient tried to speak again, but a cough tore through him. Blood spotted his lower lip. His pressure alarm chirped. Hollis seized the opening and reclaimed the room. "Ultrasound now." Ellison stepped back. Mara stepped back. The ultrasound tech rolled in the machine. Gel on the probe. Screen angled toward Hollis. The room leaned into the glow. Mara stood beside the IV pole, adjusting tubing that did not need adjusting, watching the screen from the edge of her vision. Free fluid. Too much for comfort. Not enough, perhaps, for Hollis to abandon his sequence. The patient had stopped fighting, but his eyes kept finding Mara. Each time they did, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition on his side. Denial on hers. Fear somewhere between them both. Hollis straightened. "Positive fast. Call surgery. Start fluids. Let us stabilize before transport." Mara looked at the monitor. Blood pressure 94/60 after fluids. Heart rate 118. Skin pale. Breathing shallow. The kind of temporary improvement that could fool a person who wanted to be fooled. She kept her voice level. "His pressure response is weak. With the fluid distribution, he may have a splenic injury. If he drops again, he needs the OR immediately." Hollis did not turn around. "I am aware of what free fluid can indicate. His heart rate is climbing. He is in pain and shock. The fluids are buying minutes, not safety." Now he turned. The room felt suddenly smaller. "Nurse Ellison," he said, each syllable polished, "your concern has been noted." The thank you did not come this time. That made it worse. Mara held his gaze. If he drops again, waiting for consult will cost him. Hollis took one step closer enough for the residents to understand they were watching a boundary being drawn. "This is not a battlefield. This is an emergency department. We follow protocols here." Mara felt the old words hit an old place. Not a battlefield. He had no idea what a battlefield looked like when it wore clean floors and soft lighting. He did not know how quickly a room with oxygen lines and medication cabinets could become a kill zone. He did not know how many people died because the person with authority could not hear the person with the warning. She said nothing. The surgical consult was called. For 12 minutes the room pretended to stabilize. Mara checked the IV site. She changed gauze. She charted vitals. She watched the monitor climb toward disaster in small, polite increments. Heart rate 124. Blood pressure 88/56. Skin cooler. Breathing tighter. Hollis ordered another bolus. The patient's eye opened again. He looked at Mara. His mouth moved. No sound came out. Mara leaned closer despite herself. He shaped the words slowly, fighting sedation pain and whatever blood loss was stealing from him. "They know." Then the monitor screamed. Blood pressure 74/40. Heart rate 138. The room erupted. Hollis moved fast. He was good when the emergency was undeniable. Mara gave him that. His voice sharpened. His hands found purpose. He called for blood surgery transport, more pressure, another line. The residents snapped into motion, but the minutes had already been spent. The blood bank had a delay. 90 seconds. 90 seconds in a trauma bay could be a lifetime if the body had already started losing the argument. Mara crossed to the crash cart and opened the drawer before anyone asked. She handed supplies into hands that needed them. She did not take over. She did not have to. She stood exactly where the next failure would happen and met it before it landed. When the OR team finally arrived, the patient was barely stable. As they rolled him out, his hand shifted beneath the blanket. 2 fingers moved toward Mara, not reaching, signaling. Old signal, old unit language. Her throat tightened. Then he was gone through the double doors. Hollis watched the gurney disappear. For a moment, something passed over his face. Not regret, not gratitude. Calculation. Mara saw it and filed it away before she knew why. Hollis turned toward her. "You are off this case." The nearest nurse looked up. Mara did not. "Bay 6 for the rest of your shift," Hollis said. "Do not involve yourself in the surgical follow-up unless requested." Tessa, standing behind the desk, went still. Mara nodded once. Understood. She walked out before the room could decide what to do with the silence. Bay 6 held a teenage boy named Noah Price, 17, wrist fractured after slipping on wet steps outside a movie theater. He sat on the bed with his hoodie sleeves pushed up and rain still drying in his hair. "Is that guy going to die?" he asked as Mara checked his splint. Mara wrapped the bandage smoothly. "Not if everyone does their job." "That doctor looked mad at you." "He usually does." Why Mara secured the final wrap. Some people confuse being questioned with being attacked. Noah considered that. "My football coach does that." "Then your football coach and Dr. Hollis would have a lot to discuss." Noah laughed, then winced. The ordinary sound helped. For a few minutes there was only the small work. Ice instructions, pain scale, neurovascular check. A mother signing discharge papers with shaking hands because the storm had scared her more than the fracture had. Mara finished the chart and stepped back into the hall. The ER felt changed. No one said anything directly. They did not have to. People looked away when she approached, then looked back when they thought she had passed. The whispered joke from earlier had died somewhere in Trauma Bay 2 and left a stain behind. Tessa appeared beside her with a fresh coffee. "It is terrible," she said. Mara took it. "That is the only kind this place makes." "You were right about him." Mara stared into the cup. "Being right after the crash is not much of a gift." "No." Tessa followed her gaze toward the surgical elevators. "What did he call you?" Mara took a sip. The coffee tasted burned and metallic. "A name from a long time ago." "That is not an answer either." Mara looked at her. Tessa did not push, but her voice dropped. "When he said it, you looked like someone opened a grave." For a moment, Mara could not find the simple lie, so she chose a different one. "I am just tired." Tessa studied her. "You are a lot of things, Mara. Tired is only the one people are allowed to see." The words landed too close. Before Mara could answer, the floor beneath them gave a faint vibration. Not loud, not dramatic. A deep mechanical tremor that passed through the tile and vanished. Tessa looked toward the ambulance bay. Generator Mara listened. The vibration came again. Lower this time. Rhythmic. Engines. More than one. Outside, beyond the rain-streaked glass, white headlights turned into the ambulance entrance with a precision no civilian convoy ever had. Mara set the coffee down very carefully. Tessa followed her stare. The first black SUV stopped at the curb, then the second, then the third. Mara's face went still in a way Tessa had never seen before. At the main entrance, security stepped back from the doors as men in dark gear moved through the rain. Mara whispered one word so low it almost disappeared beneath the storm. No. Mara's whisper vanished beneath the rain, but Tessa heard enough to look at her twice. The black SUVs sat outside the ambulance entrance with their engines running lined up beneath the harsh white lights of the overhang. Rain slid over their windshields in sheets. Men stepped out in dark tactical jackets, not rushing, not hesitating, moving with the calm of people who had rehearsed violence until it became routine. The first man through the hospital doors wore navy dress blues under a black raincoat. He was tall, somewhere in his early 60s, with close-cropped gray hair and a face that looked carved more than aged. Water dripped from the edge of his coat onto the lobby floor. 2 officers came in behind him. Neither spoke. Neither looked around like visitors. Security moved to stop them. The older man reached into his coat and showed identification. The guard read it, and whatever authority he thought he had drained from his posture. The man turned to the front desk. "I need Mara Ellison." The receptionist blinked. "Are you family?" "No." His voice carried without being raised. "I am Vice Admiral Warren Slade, Naval Special Programs. I need Mara Ellison right now." A patient waiting with a towel pressed to his forehead lowered his hand. A mother pulled her little girl closer. The entire lobby seemed to inhale and hold it. Tessa looked at Mara. Mara did not answer. Her eyes stayed on Slade. He saw her across the emergency department. For a moment, his face did not move. Then something in his expression shifted. Not relief, not shock, but a grief so controlled it had become almost invisible. He stepped past the desk. Ghost Falcon. The name struck the room harder the second time. This time it was not whispered by a bleeding man on a gurney. It was spoken by a vice admiral in dress uniform in front of nurses, residents, security guards, patients, and Dr. Grant Hollis, who had just emerged from the trauma corridor with a chart in his hand. Hollis stopped walking. Mara stood with one hand resting beside the abandoned coffee cup. Her prosthetic leg was hidden beneath her scrub pants again, but somehow every person nearby seemed aware of it now. The limp they had mocked had become part of a question none of them knew how to ask. Mara looked at Slade. "Tell me about my patient." Slade's eyes narrowed slightly. He had expected something else. Maybe fear, maybe denial, maybe the kind of emotion that belonged to a ghost being called by name. Instead, Mara gave him a nurse's question. Slade lowered his voice, but the room was so quiet that half the desk still heard him. "Caleb Voss is the reason we came. He made it to surgery." "Yes. Alive. For now." That is not an answer. Slade looked toward one of his officers. The officer glanced down once at a secure tablet, then back up. "Dr. Amara Keene has him in OR3, Slade said. "Spleen injury, internal bleeding. They are operating. Grade unknown from here." Mara's jaw tightened. Hollis stepped forward. "Excuse me, I am the attending physician in this emergency department. Someone needs to explain why military personnel are entering my hospital and questioning my staff." Slade turned his head just enough to acknowledge him. "And you are Dr. Grant Hollis." The name landed strangely. Mara noticed it, not in Slade's face exactly, but in the brief pause before he answered. "Doctor, that is not an explanation." "No," Slade said, "it is not." Hollis's lips pressed together. Before he could speak again, the lights flickered. Only once. A small shiver across the ceiling panels. The monitors kept singing. The desk computers stayed on. Patients looked up, then back at their phones, reassured by the quick return of brightness. Mara did not look reassured. She turned toward the security panel mounted behind the nurse's station. Its status light had changed from green to amber. It blinked once, then again. Tessa noticed Mara's face. "What is it?" Mara set the coffee down slowly. "That light should not be amber." Slade's hand moved toward the radio clipped inside his coat. A young officer came through the doors from outside, rain shining on his hair. He crossed the lobby fast, but not at a run. "Sir," he said, stopping beside Slade. "Hospital network just dropped from the outside gateway. Internal systems are still active, but we are seeing packet loss across building controls." Hollis looked at him as if the man had started speaking another language. "Building controls," Hollis said. Mara answered before the officer could. "HVAC, power management, elevators, access control. Some equipment interfaces if this hospital was stupid enough to tie them through the same control layer." The officer looked at her. Slade did too. Mara had already moved behind the nurse's station. Her fingers flew over the keyboard at the local operations terminal. The screen hesitated before accepting her login. Not frozen. Sluggish. That was worse. A complete shutdown was a wall. Sluggish meant someone was inside the room with you turning the lights down one switch at a time. Hollis came closer. "Nurse Ellison, step away from that terminal." "No." The answer was quiet. It stopped him more effectively than a shout. Mara opened the hospital system's dashboard. Half the icons loaded. 3 did not. The ventilation overview appeared, then refreshed with missing data from the East Wing. Backup power status showed green, then amber, then green again. Tessa leaned over her shoulder. "Is this a storm issue?" "No." Mara clicked into the elevator grid. One car had stalled between floors for 12 seconds and restarted without a maintenance call. "They are testing response." Slade moved beside her. "We believe Voss was followed." Mara shook her head without looking away from the screen. If this intrusion is already inside facility controls, they did not follow him here. They were here before he arrived. Slade went still. The young officer beside him swallowed. Hollis gave a short, hard laugh. "This is absurd. You are letting an agency nurse diagnose a power fluctuation like an attack." Mara finally looked at him. "Dr. Hollis, how many patients in this building are on mechanical ventilation right now?" He frowned. "That is not my department." "Tessa." Tessa was already reaching for the staffing board. "ICU has 11 critical patients, 3 vented. PACU has 2 still recovering from anesthesia. OR3 has Voss on the table. Neonatal transport team brought in 1 infant an hour ago, but they are on independent equipment." Mara nodded once. "Get eyes on every one of them. Not the central monitor. Human eyes. If a screen freezes, do not reboot it. If a number looks normal for too long, assume it is lying until proven otherwise." Tessa stared at her for half a breath. Then she turned and started assigning nurses. Hollis stepped into her path. "This is my department." Tessa looked at him. "Then help." He did not. Mara picked up the desk phone and dialed the operating floor. The first attempt failed. She tried again through the internal line. It rang twice. "Operating room desk. This is Mara Ellison in the ER. Put OR3 on speaker. Now." "Who is this Mara Ellison ER nurse?" "Caleb Voss is on your table. I need anesthesia now." A pause. Noise in the background. Movement. A muffled voice. Then a man came on the line. "This is Dr. Simon Vale." "Who am I speaking to, Mara Ellison?" "Is Voss still intubated?" "Yes." "Switch to manual ventilation protocol and isolate any network-linked equipment in that room. Another pause longer this time. Why? Because the hospital control network is being degraded and your room may still show stable readings after it loses real-time integrity. Dr. Vale did not waste time pretending he understood everything. How certain are you? Certain enough that I am calling before it fails. In the background, a woman's voice cut in, Dr. Keen, sharp and impatient. Simon, what is this? Mara heard Vale cover the receiver. Then his voice again. We are switching now. Do not reconnect anything until the system is physically isolated, and do not trust automated logs from this point forward. Hollis reached across the desk and took the phone from her hand. This is Dr. Grant Hollis. Continue standard surgical protocols unless you receive instruction from hospital command. Mara looked at him, then at the phone in his hand. From the speaker, Dr. Vale said, Too late. We are already switching. Hollis's face tightened. Mara took the phone back. Thank you, doctor. She hung up. Slade watched her with a look that was no longer searching for the woman in an old file. He was watching someone operate, Lieutenant Porter Slade said. The young officer straightened. Sir, assist Nurse Ellison. Porter moved beside her with a rugged tablet. Mara pointed toward the hallway. Do you have anyone who understands industrial control systems? Yes. Send them to basement level 2, East Corridor. Backup generator interface. The panel is behind the maintenance cage, not inside the machine room. Porter blinked. How do you know the layout? I read evacuation maps when I cannot sleep. That was not fully true. She read buildings the way some people read faces. Exits, choke points, power lines, blind corners, places where a system could be hurt without leaving a visible wound. Porter spoke into his radio. Slade kept his voice low. You said they were already here. Explain. Mara pulled up the access control history. The page stalled at 40%. An outside attacker can knock at the door. This does not feel like knocking. The lights flickered again. This time the emergency backup lights came on for 3 seconds before the main panels returned. A woman in the waiting area began to cry. A child asked if the hospital was going dark. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor alarm started and stopped too quickly. Mara watched the screen. Degradation patterns, she said. Small failures across unrelated systems. Elevators. Network latency. Security status. Power handoff. They want staff chasing individual problems. Slade's eyes hardened. To hide the larger one. To make us create the larger one ourselves. Hollis stepped closer. Enough. This is not your role. Mara did not raise her voice. There are patients upstairs whose machines may become unreliable in the next 10 minutes. If you have a better use for your authority, use it. For the first time since Mara had known him, Hollis had no immediate answer. A call came through the desk line. Tessa answered, listened, then looked at Mara. ICU says telemetry froze on bed 8 for almost a minute. Patient was fine when checked manually. Time. 11:42. Mara wrote it on the back of a blank form. Another nurse called from the hallway. PACU says one monitor rebooted by itself. Tell them not to reboot anything else, Mara said. Manual vitals every 5 minutes until cleared. Porter's radio cracked. Team 2 at basement level 2. We found the generator interface. Relay cabinet shows external command lock. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. There it was. Do not reset it, she said, leaning toward Porter's radio. Physically isolate the relay, pull it from the command loop, and keep local power stable. If you reset it, you may give them a cleaner path back in. A voice answered through static. Who is speaking? Slade took the radio. The person keeping this hospital alive. Do exactly what she said. Rain beat against the windows like handfuls of gravel. Hollis looked from Slade to Mara. Something moved behind his eyes. Not confusion, not disbelief. Recognition, maybe. Mara caught it, but another alarm took her attention. The lab line rang. Tessa answered, then held the receiver out. Lab for you. Mara took it. This is Ellison. A tired male voice came through. Warren in lab. I was told to report analyzer inconsistencies. Analyzer 3 is producing values I do not trust. It passed morning calibration, but the last batch has drift markers. How many samples? 7 in the past hour. Any critical patients? I have one ICU patient. Bed. 4 potassium. Check at 2100. Borderline low. Mara wrote faster. Run a manual redraw through Analyzer 1. No exceptions. Flag all Analyzer 3 results since 10:30. I already started. Good. She hung up and turned to Tessa. Find ICU Bed 4's nurse. Tell them I want eyes on that patient now, and if he has weakness rhythm changes or new bradycardia, they call me directly. Tessa nodded and moved. Slade stepped closer. You are managing a hospital attack with a nurse's station phone and scrap paper. I have had worse equipment. The words came out before she could stop them. Slade heard the past inside them. So did Hollis. For a moment, the ER noise thinned around Mara. She became aware of her own reflection in the dark glass beyond the lobby. Scrubs, damp hair, one shoulder lower from fatigue. The face of a woman who had spent 8 years becoming unremarkable. The system dashboard blinked. A new alert appeared. Pharmacy network latency. Mara's blood cooled. No, she said softly. Slade saw it. What? She opened the pharmacy cabinet overview. The page loaded in broken pieces. Cabinet names appeared one by one across the hospital floors. Green, green, amber, green, amber. The amber lights multiplied. Hollis leaned in despite himself. What does that mean? Mara looked at the list, then toward the medication room doors. It means they are not just attacking the building. The pharmacy director line rang before she could finish. Tessa grabbed it from across the desk and mouthed the name. Dr. Elise Marrow. Mara took the call. Marrow's voice was controlled but tight. Whoever told my staff not to reboot cabinets, thank you. We are seeing configuration changes. What kind dose threshold modifications? Controlled sedatives in 3 cabinets. Potassium chloride concentration parameter on 1 surgical floor cabinet. The room around Mara seemed to drop several degrees. Potassium chloride. A drug that could correct a dangerous imbalance when given properly, a drug that could stop a heart when given wrong. Has that cabinet dispensed since the change I am checking? Mara gripped the phone. Slade was watching her face. Porter had stopped typing. Marrow came back on. 1 dispense from surgical floor room 412, 40 minutes ago. Mara turned to Tessa. Call 412. Now. Tell the nurse not to administer anything from that dispense if it has not already been given. Tessa moved so fast her chair hit the wall behind her. Mara stayed on the line. Elise lock every cabinet with modified parameters. Manual pharmacy verification only. No overrides unless a physician and pharmacist both physically confirm. Marrow did not argue. Done. Tessa was speaking rapidly into the second phone. Her face changed as she listened. Then she covered the receiver. Room 412 nurse caught it. She said the amount looked wrong, so she held the medication and was trying to reach pharmacy. Mara exhaled once. Not relief. Delay. They had not lost that patient. Not yet. Slade's voice was quiet. This attacker understands hospital workflow. Yes. Mara looked at the pharmacy timestamps as they loaded. Her eyes stopped on the first modification time. 10:51 p.m. Caleb's ambulance had not called in until 11:12. The room narrowed around that number. Mara checked again, thinking the screen had glitched. It had not. The first pharmacy cabinet change happened 21 minutes before EMS notified Mercy Haven about Caleb Voss. She turned to Slade. You said he was followed. That was our working assumption. Your assumption is wrong. She tapped the timestamp. They were inside our systems before the ambulance call, before we knew he was coming. Slade stared at the screen. Porter whispered, "That means they knew his destination." Mara looked toward the surgical elevators. Or they knew mine. For the first time, Vice Admiral Warren Slade looked afraid. Not for himself, for the building, for the hundreds of sleeping patients above them, for the woman standing at the nurse's station who had been dead on paper for 8 years. A radio call cracked through Porter's device. "Basement team. Relay isolated. Emergency power stable for critical systems. We still have active intrusion traces elsewhere." Mara nodded. "Good. Keep it physical. No remote reset." The ER doors opened again. Wind pushed rain across the floor. 2 more officers entered and spoke quietly to Slade. Hollis backed away from the desk unnoticed by most. Mara noticed. His face had returned to its usual mask, but his right hand was closed too tightly around his phone. Tessa came back to Mara's side. "ICU bed. 4 nurse says patient is stable, but he is weaker than earlier. They are doing a manual rhythm strip now." Mara's eyes moved from pharmacy to lab to ICU notes in her head. "Tell them I am coming after pharmacy is locked." Slade looked at her. "You cannot be everywhere." "I know." That was the problem. A hospital was not one battlefield. It was 100 small rooms where people could die quietly behind curtains while everyone was focused on the loudest alarm. Mara reached for the satellite phone Porter had set on the desk. "Give me a clean line to OR3. Porter connected it. Dr. Vale answered. "Still manual. Voss is alive." "Doctor, Keene says if anyone else calls to explain her own operating room to her, she will throw something sharp." Mara almost smiled. "Tell her the pharmacy network is compromised. Nothing new from automated cabinets. Manual verification only." Vale's voice changed. "Understood." "And Dr. Vale. Yes, if his pressure falls, do not trust the displayed trend until someone confirms the line manually." A brief silence. "You really have seen this before, haven't you?" Mara looked at the amber lights blooming across the screen. "Yes." She ended the call. Slade stood beside her, close enough now that only she could hear him. "Mara." She hated the way he said her name like it belonged to both her lives. "What happened after Kandahar?" Her fingers paused over the keyboard. The ER moved around them, phones ringing, nurses crossing, rain hissing outside, Hollis speaking low into his cell near the trauma hallway. Mara looked at Slade. "You buried my file. We sealed it to keep you alive. You told my unit I was dead. We believed that was the only way to protect you." The old anger came quietly, which made it worse. "You do not get to arrive at my hospital with headlights and guns and say my call sign in front of people who do not know what it cost." Slade accepted the hit without flinching. "You are right." That answer surprised her more than denial would have. He glanced toward the elevators. But Caleb Voss found something. Something tied to Operation Glass Harbor. He was trying to reach you before they reached him. Mara's mouth went dry. Glass Harbor. The name had weight, not because it was classified, not because it was dangerous, because it was where the official story had ended and her nightmares had begun. A call came from the hallway. "Tessa." The charge nurse turned. A young nurse stood at the corridor entrance, pale. "I see you just paged again. Bed 4. They said come now." Mara's body shifted before thought caught up. At the same moment, the pharmacy terminal flashed a new alert. "Cabinet 7 surgical floor remote configuration attempt active. 2 threats. 2 floors apart. 1 broad and spreading. 1 patient already calling for help." Mara looked at the screen, then toward the stairwell. Slade saw the calculation cross her face. Which one? Mara grabbed the clean radio from the desk and clipped it to her waistband. I do not know yet. Then she moved toward the stairs, her prosthetic foot striking the tile in a hard, steady rhythm that made everyone near the nurse's station turn and watch her go. Mara took the stairs because elevators had become promises she no longer trusted. Her prosthetic foot struck the concrete steps with a rhythm that echoed up the stairwell, hard, steady, controlled. Behind her, Lieutenant Porter kept pace, one hand on the rail and the other around his tablet. Vice Admiral Slade followed 2 steps behind, quieter than a man his size should have been. The hospital sounded different in the stairwell. Away from the nurse's station, the alarms softened into distant birdsong. The storm became a low animal growl against the walls. Somewhere above them, a cartwheel squeaked. Somewhere below, a door opened and closed with too much force. Mara climbed faster. Porter was breathing hard by the second landing. ICU is 3rd floor, he said. I know. Pharmacy is 2nd. I know that too. Slade said nothing. He understood the math. 1 patient in front of her. 1 system attack spreading behind her. A nurse could not be in 2 places. A soldier could not either. The trick was choosing the place where seconds mattered most. Mara pushed through the 3rd floor door. The ICU lights were dimmed for night shift, but nobody was moving like it was night anymore. Nurses stood at glass doors, checking lines by hand, counting respirations, comparing screens against living bodies. A respiratory therapist was bent over a ventilator, one ear close to the machine, listening as if the thing might confess. At the central station, a nurse looked up. Mara, bed 4. The nurse pointed. Mara saw the patient before she reached the room. Henry Cho, 64, post-cardiac procedure, lay half-raised in bed with a gray cast to his face. His eyes were open. Too open. A man trying not to look afraid. Beside him, Luis Vega stood at the monitor with a printed rhythm strip in his hand. Luis did not waste time. 6 PVCs in a row. Converted back on his own, but his heart rate dropped to 48. He says his legs feel heavy. No chest pain. Mara moved to the bedside and touched Henry's wrist. His skin was cool. His pulse was slow but present, a little slippery beneath her fingers. Mr. Cho. I'm Mara. Tell me what you feel. Henry swallowed. Weak, like someone filled my legs with sand. When did it start? Maybe 20 minutes ago. I thought it was the medicine. Mara glanced at Luis. Potassium result 3.1 at 9, but lab called after. Analyzer 3 is unreliable. Did he get his supplement? Luis's face tightened just enough. The cabinet had a dispense error at 9:40. I rerouted it. The log says the second dispense went through. Show me. Luis turned to the wall terminal. His fingers moved quickly. Mara watched his shoulders as much as the screen. Good nurses carried fear in small places. Tight jaw, still hands, less blinking. The log loaded slowly. Too slowly. Mara stepped closer. There, Luis said. First attempt partial dispense. 2 packets. Second attempt completed. Did the patient receive the first partial or the completed dose? Luis looked at Henry's medication cup on the rolling tray. Empty now. I believed it was the completed dose. Believed. His voice lowered. The packets looked normal. The count matched what I thought I had pulled. Mara looked back at Henry. A lab value that could not be trusted. A partial dose from a cabinet already throwing errors. Muscle weakness, ventricular ectopy, bradycardia. She felt the diagnosis take shape before the chart could catch up. Call Dr. Pryor, she said. Now, tell him I need IV potassium replacement approved at controlled rate with continuous cardiac monitoring. Tell Warren in lab I need a fresh draw run through Analyzer 1 only. Luis grabbed the phone. Porter stood in the doorway watching the monitor like it was an enemy map. Slade stayed outside the room giving the staff space. His eyes stayed on Mara. Henry looked at her. Am I having a heart attack? Mara leaned over the bed rail just enough for him to see her clearly. No, sir. Your heart is irritated because your blood chemistry may be off. We are going to correct it carefully. Maybe I do not like pretending to know what I have not confirmed, but I know enough to start protecting you. Henry blinked. Something in that answer steadied him. Dr. Ansel Pryor arrived in 4 minutes, hair mussed, glasses low on his nose, stethoscope twisted around his neck. He looked at the rhythm strip, then at Mara's notes, then at Henry. You think the potassium is lower than 3.1? I think 3.1 may be a lie. Pryor nodded once. Start the infusion. Slow rate. Repeat level pending. Luis, keep rhythm strips every 5 minutes until we are stable. He signed the order without asking Mara why she was making calls from the center of a military response. Some doctors knew when questions were cheaper later. Mara primed the line herself. She checked the pump, then did not trust the pump. She had Luis verify the rate manually and had the medication label read aloud. Every step spoken, every step witnessed. Henry watched her hands. You move like my daughter, he said. Mara glanced at him. Is she a nurse, army medic? Came home quiet. Mara's hand paused for a breath. Then she secured the line. Quiet does not mean broken. Henry's eyes shone, but he nodded. The infusion began. For 8 minutes, the room lived inside the monitor's rhythm. Beep, pause, beep. Mara counted without looking like she was counting. The rate climbed from 48 to 52, then 56. The next strip showed fewer irregular beats. Henry's shoulders eased by a fraction. Warren from lab called 23 minutes after the draw left the room. Luis answered, listened, then looked at Mara. 2.7. Pryor closed his eyes. Mara did not. 2.7 was not a number. It was a cliff edge. Henry had been standing there quietly while systems around him lied. Pryor looked at her. You were right. Mara was already updating the chart. I prefer useful. Henry's hand shifted on the blanket. Thank you, he said. Mara looked at him, then really looked. Not at the monitor, not at the diagnosis, at the man beneath the wires. You stay with Luis. He is better company than he looks. Henry managed a faint smile. Luis exhaled something that was almost a laugh. In the hallway, Porter stepped toward her with his tablet. Pharmacy just locked the compromised cabinets, but Dr. Merrow says there are 11 configuration changes total. She wants you there. Mara looked back once at Henry's monitor. Stable for now. For now was enough to leave. She met Luis's eyes. If his rate drops again, you call me before you call the screen. I will. Mara left the ICU at a pace just below a run. The second floor smelled different. Less antiseptic, more paper plastic wrap, and the bitter chemical scent of medication storage. The pharmacy suite sat behind a secured door with a badge reader and keypad. One of Slade's officers stood outside with his hand near his jacket, not on a weapon, but close enough to speak clearly. Inside, Dr. Elise Merrow stood over the central terminal like she was holding back a flood with her body. She was a compact woman in her early 50s with silver threaded through dark hair and a face that did not forgive sloppy work. 2 pharmacy techs moved behind her, pulling manual logs, checking cabinet maps, speaking in clipped voices. Merrow looked up as Mara entered. You are the nurse everyone keeps calling? Yes. Good. Then help me understand why someone changed my cabinet thresholds without tripping a hard alarm. Mara came beside her. Because they did not force the system. They used permissions the system believed were real. Merrow's mouth tightened. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. The terminal showed the hospital map. Each automated dispensing cabinet blinked with a status indicator. Green meant normal. Amber meant modified. Red meant locked. Too many were amber. Merrow pointed. Sedative thresholds altered in ICU step-down and surgical recovery. Potassium chloride concentration parameter modified in surgical floor cabinet 7. Narcotic override timing changed in PACU. Whoever did this knew which settings could look like workflow adjustments if nobody was watching closely. Mara studied the timestamps. The changes were staggered. Not one dump, not a panic move. Someone had moved with patience. "Show me the first modification." Marrow clicked. The first entry appeared. 10:51 p.m. Mara felt the same cold clarity from downstairs return. "Caleb Voss arrived at 11:16, she said. Marrow turned to her. "What?" "The patient from the ER. The man on the operating table. His ambulance call came in after this." Slade entered behind them, rain no longer on his coat, but storm still in his face. Meaning Mara pointed at the timestamp. Meaning this began before the hospital knew he existed. Porter looked up from his tablet. Could they have been tracking EMS independently? Maybe, Mara said. But this first change is not reactive, it is positioned. She clicked through the cabinet list. Surgical recovery, ICU, cardiac step-down, PACU, pharmacy route. All areas where patients were fragile enough that a medication mistake could be blamed on complexity. This was designed to create deaths that looked like hospital failure. Marrow went very still. No one spoke for a moment. Then one of the techs at the back table said, "Dr. Marrow." His voice had changed. Mara turned. The tech held a printed access sheet. His name badge read Aaron Mills. The pharmacy suite was accessed at 10:43 p.m. Eddie Ramos badge. Marrow frowned. Eddie clocked out at 7. Aaron swallowed. His badge opened the west storage door at 10:43, then again at 10:47. Mara looked at Slade. "Find Eddie Ramos." Slade was already on the radio. Porter pushed his photo to the perimeter team and hospital security. "Locate the employee. Do not approach if he is alone with anyone else. Confirm condition first." Porter relayed it. Marrow pressed both hands to the counter. "If Eddie did this, I will kill him myself." Mara shook her head. If Eddie did this, he would have used his own badge after shift inside his own department under cameras during an active hospital emergency. That is stupid. Eddie is not stupid. Then we assume his badge is no longer just his badge. The pharmacy suite fell into a different kind of silence. Outside, a distant announcement came over the PA, warped by a brief audio glitch. "Environmental services to East Corridor. Environmental services to East Corridor." The voice repeated once, then cut off mid-word. Mara looked up. "Did anyone call that?" No one answered. Slade spoke into his radio. "Verify East Corridor." Static answered first. Then a voice. "Copy. Checking." Mara looked back at the terminal. The system wanted attention everywhere. A cabinet here, a patient there, a false announcement down the hall. The oldest battlefield trick in the world. Make the defender split the mind before splitting the line. She pulled a chair closer and sat, not because she was tired, though she was, but because sitting let her think without the room reading her pain. "Dr. Marrow, I need all dispense logs from modified cabinets for the last 90 minutes. Marrow nodded to Aaron. Mara Slade said quietly. She did not look away from the screen. "Your leg." Only then did she realize her right hand had moved to the edge of the prosthetic socket, pressing where the pain had begun to burn. She dropped her hand. "I am working." "That was not my question. It is my answer." Slade accepted it, but the concern stayed in his eyes. The logs populated slowly. Mara scanned them line by line. Most dispenses had been held verified or unrelated. 2 were questionable. One was Henry Cho's potassium supplement. The other was a sedative pulled in PACU for a post-surgical patient, but the nurse had used a lower dose after assessing respiratory rate. 2 near misses. No confirmed deaths. That meant the attacker had failed so far. Failed attackers changed tactics. Porter's radio cracked. "We found Ramos's car. Employee garage level 2. Still parked." Slade keyed his mic. "Inside the building. Unknown." Mara stood. Where are the blind spots between pharmacy and the loading dock? Marrow pointed toward the wall map near the emergency exit. Service corridor behind sterile supply. Cameras at both ends, but the middle section near the linen chute has been dead for months. Mara stared at her. Dead for months, Marrow's eyes flashed. I reported it. I believe you. Another radio call came in. Team 3. We have a staff member in the first floor utility closet near East Loading. Male, conscious, restrained, badge missing. Slade's jaw hardened. Name, a pause. Eddie Ramos. Marrow whispered, "Oh God." Mara was already moving. The utility closet sat on the first floor near a corridor most patients never saw. It smelled of floor cleaner wet cardboard and old dust. By the time Mara arrived, 2 officers had the door open and a nurse from the ER was cutting zip ties from Eddie Ramos's wrists. Eddie was 27, maybe 28, with frightened eyes and blood dried along his collar. A bruise darkened his jaw. A shallow cut above his ear had crusted into his hair. He flinched when Slade stepped too close. Mara lowered herself into his line of sight. "Eddie, I'm Mara. You are safe enough for the next 30 seconds. I need those 30 seconds from you." His breathing hitched. My badge. He took my badge, who I did not see his face. Mask, dark jacket. He knew my name. When, after I clocked out, I came back in because I forgot my phone in the break room. He was waiting near the service hall. Mara glanced at Slade. Did he ask anything? Eddie swallowed. He said, "She on tonight?" I thought he meant Dr. Marrow. I did not answer. Then he hit me. Mara's skin went cold. Slade heard it too. Eddie looked ashamed, terrified, angry all at once. "I tried to fight." "I know. You do not know that." Mara looked at the zip tie marks on his wrists, the torn skin, the angle of the bruise. "Yes," she said. "I do." The ER nurse checked Eddie's pupils. "He needs imaging." "Take him," Mara said. "Keep someone with him. No one enters his room without ID confirmed by Tessa or Dr. Marrow." Slade gave the order to one of his officers. As Eddie was helped up, he grabbed Mara's sleeve. He had a hospital badge, too, Eddie whispered. Mara went still. "Did you see the name?" Eddie shook his head. "No, but it opened the stairwell door. The restricted one near admin." Mara looked down the corridor toward the administrative wing. A hospital badge. Not just stolen pharmacy access. Someone with deeper movement through the building. Someone who had prepared routes. Porter came up fast, tablet in hand. "External gateway remains contained. Basement relay stable. We are still seeing local access attempts near server admin." Slade looked toward Mara. Could be the same person. Could be. But Mara's voice had gone quiet. She thought of Hollis backing away from the desk. Hollis with his phone in his hand. Hollis asking who gave her authority while patients were almost dying because of altered systems. Hollis, whose face had changed when Slade said her call sign. Not evidence. Not yet. Suspicion was not a diagnosis. Suspicion was the thing that told you where to press. Tessa's voice came over the borrowed radio. "Mara OR3 update. Voss is out. Doctor Keene says he is alive and headed to recovery. She also says if you are alive, she wants to know who the hell you are." For the first time that night, Mara closed her eyes. Only for a second. Caleb had survived. The man who called her Ghost Falcon had made it off the table. When she opened her eyes, the exhaustion had not left. It had sharpened. Slade watched her carefully. "You need to rest." "No. Mara." She looked at him. Someone entered this hospital before Caleb arrived. They stole a pharmacy badge, altered medication systems, touched building controls, and knew there was a woman here important enough to ask about before they hit the tech. Slade's expression darkened because he knew where she was going. Mara continued. They did not come to kill Caleb in the street. They came to make sure he died inside a hospital surrounded by enough confusion to bury the reason. The lights hummed overhead steady for now. Beyond the corridor, Mercy Haven kept breathing. Machines ran, nurses moved, patients slept without knowing how close the dark had come. Mara turned toward the recovery wing. I need to talk to Caleb. Slade stepped beside her. He just came out of surgery. Then he is alive enough to have enemies. She started walking, one hand near the radio, the other curled around nothing at her side. Behind her, the utility closet door remained open, zip ties on the floor like pale plastic bones. Mara reached recovery with Slade at her shoulder, and the sound of the utility closet still lodged somewhere behind her ribs. Zip ties on tile. Blood on Eddie Ramos's collar. A stranger asking if she was on shift before the first system changed. The recovery wing had not fallen into chaos yet. That made it worse. Low lights glowed along the floor. Curtains hung half-closed around post-surgical bays. Monitors pulsed in calm green lines above sleeping patients who had no idea that the building around them had spent the last hour trying to betray them. A nurse at the recovery desk looked up as Mara approached. You cannot come back here unless you are assigned to the patient. Mara stopped before the desk. Her voice stayed even. Caleb Voss. Bay 3. Dr. Keene sent word that he is out of surgery. The nurse looked past her at Vice Admiral Slade. His uniform did not change hospital policy, but it changed the room. The nurse hesitated, then checked the screen. He is awake enough to be confused and stubborn. Pressure is holding. Pain control is limited because anesthesia wants his airway clean. Has anyone asked for him? Only you people. Mara heard the edge in that answer and did not blame her. A hospital under pressure became territorial. Nurses protected their rooms the way soldiers protected gates. Slade stepped closer. No one enters this recovery wing without your direct confirmation, he said. Not security, not physicians, not my personnel. You verify every badge and every face. The nurse looked at him, then at Mara. Mara nodded once. Tonight, assume the badge can lie. The nurse's face changed. She reached beneath the desk and pulled out a manual visitor log. Bay 3, she said. Mara walked through the curtain line. Caleb Voss lay under a warming blanket with 2 IV lines in his arm and oxygen resting beneath his nose. The violence had gone out of him for the moment, leaving only the cost. His skin had a waxy pallor. One side of his face was bruised dark purple beneath the swelling. The man who had nearly torn through restraints now looked smaller, older, and far more human. His good eye opened before she reached the bed. For a second, neither of them spoke. The monitor filled the silence. Beep, beep, beep. Caleb swallowed. His voice came out rough from the tube that had kept him breathing. You look different. Mara pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. Her leg hurt when she bent, but she kept the movement clean. It has been 8 years. His mouth shifted, not quite a smile. Same eyes. Slade stopped near the curtain, not close enough to crowd the bed, not far enough to miss a word. Caleb noticed him and gave the smallest nod. Admiral. Voss, you found her. Slade's jaw tightened. You led a war to her door. Caleb closed his eye for a moment. I tried not to. Mara leaned forward. Tell me why. Caleb turned his gaze back to her. Pain made him slow. Sedation made him careful. The fear beneath both was clear enough that Mara felt it before he said a word. Operation Glass Harbor, he whispered. The name entered the recovery bay like smoke. Mara did not move. 8 years vanished with a brutality that made the present feel thin. Heat shimmer over broken concrete. A red flare burning too close to fuel. Medics shouting over rotor wash. A man praying in Spanish while she pressed both hands into a wound that would not close. the taste of dust and iron, her own call sign tearing through radio static. Ghost Falcon, move now. Ghost Falcon, leave him. Ghost Falcon, the roof is coming down. She blinked once and recovery returned. Glass Harbor died with the file, she said. Caleb's breathing hitched. No. The file died. The mission did not. Slade took one step closer. What did you find? Caleb looked at him, then back at Mara. They sold us out before we crossed the border. The exfil window was compromised. The medical landing zone was compromised. The convoy route was compromised. Every minute of that operation was in someone else's hands before we even touched ground. Mara's throat tightened, but her voice stayed flat. We knew there was a leak. No, Caleb said. We suspected a leak. Command buried a possibility. I found proof. Slade's face hardened. Where Caleb shifted and sucked in a breath through his teeth. Mara placed one hand lightly on his forearm, not to comfort him but to stop him from tearing his stitches by pride alone. Do not move. He gave a breathless laugh. You still give orders like everybody owes you a pulse. Most of them do. The laugh faded. My jacket, he said. The one they cut off me in trauma. There is a drive sewn into the lower left back panel. Matte black, no markings. Mara looked toward the recovery desk. Property should be in ER storage. Caleb's eye sharpened. If it is still there. Slade turned to one of his officers outside the curtain. Secure the property room. No, Mara said. Slade looked at her. She stood. If someone is already cleaning logs, a uniform walking into storage will announce exactly what we want. I signed him in as trauma intake. I can retrieve it under normal chain. You are not going alone. I did not say I was. She looked toward the recovery nurse. I need a staff witness and the property log camera active. The nurse stood at once. I will go. Slade's officer stepped in behind them, silent and controlled. Caleb reached for Mara's wrist but stopped short when pain caught him. Mara. She looked down. He had used her name. Not Ghost Falcon. Not the dead woman in the file. Mara. His voice lowered. The name on that drive is not a contractor, not a field asset, not some paid informant. Slade's face went still. Caleb held Mara's eyes. It is someone who kept rising after we disappeared. How high, Caleb swallowed. High enough that every report written after Glass Harbor needs to be read again. Mara stood beside his bed for another second. Then she turned and left. The ER storage room sat behind a coated door near the ambulance corridor, a small secure space lined with labeled bins, sealed bags, and the forgotten clothes of bad nights. Wet shoes, cut shirts, wallets, phones, jewelry, evidence when pain crossed into crime. Tessa met Mara at the door. I heard Voss is alive. He is. Good. Tessa looked at Slade's officer, then at the recovery nurse. Do I want to know why we are opening property bags under witness number Tessa entered the code? Then I will ask later. The door clicked open. Inside, the air was cold and dry. Mara located the trauma bag labeled John Doe, later updated to Caleb Voss. Intake time 11:16 p.m. She read the tag out loud. The recovery nurse confirmed it. Tessa activated the ceiling camera and opened the manual log. Mara signed her name. Her hand did not tremble. She opened the sealed bag. The smell came out first. Blood, rainwater, road dirt, and the chemical sharpness of trauma shears. Caleb's clothes had been cut away in sections, each piece folded just enough to fit. Cargo pants, thermal shirt, jacket sliced along seams and sleeves. Mara pulled the jacket free and laid it on the stainless steel table. She worked the way she treated wounds, slow enough not to miss anything, fast enough not to waste time. Collar, inner pocket, left sleeve, right sleeve, front lining, torn zipper, lower back panel. There. The seam was almost perfect. Too perfect. A hidden stitch beneath the factory stitch done by someone with patient hands and no interest in beauty. Mara borrowed small scissors from Tessa. She opened the seam carefully. A drive slid into her palm. Small, matte, black. No markings. For a moment, the storage room seemed to lose sound. Tessa stared at it. What is that? Mara closed her fingers around the drive. A reason people came to kill patients tonight. The recovery nurse went pale. Mara placed the drive into a clear specimen bag because it was the only sterile, sealable container within reach. Tessa wrote the time on the label. The officer photographed the chain. Mara signed the log again. Then she heard Hollis. His voice carried through the corridor outside, low and sharp, the tone of a man trying to sound composed while anger made him careless. I do not care who gave that order. She is an agency nurse. She has no command authority. I want a full oversight review started before morning. Patient safety exposure policy violations, unauthorized instructions to surgical staff, all of it. Mara stopped with the drive sealed in her hand. Tessa's eyes lifted to hers. Hollis continued just beyond the door. Yes, I am putting it in writing. I want a record that I objected. If this turns into a liability event, I will not have this department dragged down because a temporary nurse decided to play soldier. Play soldier. Something in Mara went very quiet. Tessa reached for the door, but Mara shook her head once. Hollis's footsteps passed. His voice faded toward the administrative hall. The officer beside Mara touched his earpiece, listening. His expression changed. Mara, he said. She looked at him. Admiral Slade is calling you on the clean radio. Mara clipped the radio from her waistband and keyed it. Ellison. Slade's voice came through tight and controlled. Server room was accessed 4 minutes ago. Backup forensic log for pharmacy configuration changes has been physically destroyed. Mara looked toward the hall. Slade continued. The badge log server copy has been wiped. We still have the terminal photographs and local notes, but the original chain is gone. Tessa whispered, Someone is still inside. Mara keyed the radio again. Who accessed the server room? A pause. Not static. A human pause. Slade answered. Dr. Grant Hollis. Mara did not move for 3 seconds. Her mind rearranged the night. Hollis ignoring the splenic warning. Hollis removing her from Caleb's case. Hollis objecting to her authority while systems failed. Hollis near the trauma hallway with his phone building a paper trail. Not vanity. Cover. She looked at Tessa. Where did he go, admin corridor? Mara handed the sealed drive to the officer. No, Slade said through the radio hearing movement. Keep the drive with you. My team may be watched. Mara took it back and slipped it into the inner pocket of her scrub jacket. Tessa stepped in front of the door. Mara, I need you at the desk. Quietly find out who has seen Hollis in the last 5 minutes. Do not page him. Tessa nodded, but her eyes were hard. And if I find him, you do not approach him alone. Tessa opened the door. Mara walked into the corridor. The hospital did not look like a crime scene. That was the cruelty of it. The floors still shone. The wall clocks still moved. A janitor pushed a mop bucket near the vending machines. A woman in a blue cardigan slept upright in a waiting chair with a purse clutched against her chest. A building could be wounded without bleeding. Mara turned toward the administrative wing. Slade met her near the junction outside radiology. Porter was with him, tablet tucked under one arm, one hand pressed to his earpiece. The vice admiral looked older than he had an hour ago. Drive with me. Good. Tell me about Hollis. Slade hesitated. Mara saw the hesitation and hated him for it before he spoke. Mara, tell me. Porter looked away. Slade lowered his voice. Grant Hollis's name does not appear in the core Glass Harbor operational file. That was not my question. No, It appears in a related medical review, different classification tier. He was a Navy trauma physician 8 years ago at the facility where surviving personnel were brought after the operation collapsed. Mara felt the air leave the corridor. For a moment, the pain in her leg vanished because every nerve in her body had turned toward one old memory. A ceiling she could not focus on. Bright lights. The smell of antiseptic over burned fabric. A voice saying, "Pressure is falling." Another voice asking who she was. Hands cutting away what remained of her uniform. A man in a surgical mask above her eyes, calm, too calm, while someone else said the designation was classified. She had seen those eyes before. Not clearly, not enough to name, until now. Hollis was there, she said. Yes, he knew. Slade did not answer fast enough. Mara stepped closer. He knew who I was when I walked into Mercy Haven. Slade's face held no comfort. It appears possible. Do not insult me with possible. Porter's radio crackled. Team at server room. Door secure. No sign of Hollis. Mechanical access intact. No forced entry. Mara looked down the admin hallway. Hollis had access prepared. Porter checked his tablet. Security says his normal profile should not permit server entry. An override was added at 6:52 p.m. tonight through a generic service account. Before Caleb arrived, Mara said, "Long before." Slade's expression tightened. That makes Hollis pre-staged. Mara began walking. Slade matched her. "Where are you going to cut off his exit? We have exterior doors covered. Not all of them." Porter glanced up. Mara kept moving. Mercy Haven has a service corridor behind kitchen supply that feeds the east loading dock. It is supposed to be alarmed after 9, but kitchen deliveries keep it bypassed during storm nights because the loading gate sticks. Slade stared at her. "You know that because you read evacuation maps. I know that because I work here." They turned past radiology through a door marked staff only and into a narrower corridor with lower ceilings and older lights. The hospital's public face disappeared behind them. Back here, Mercy Haven showed its bones. Pipes along walls, scuffed paint, carts stacked with linen, boxes of disposable gowns, a faint smell of bleach and damp cardboard. Mara's limp became more pronounced on the uneven floor. Slade noticed. She ignored him. The clean radio crackled with Tessa's voice. "Mara Hollis is not at the ER desk. He left the admin corridor 2 minutes ago." Security camera near records glitched at the same time. "Of course it did," Mara said. Slade keyed his mic. "All units converge quietly on east loading access. Do not engage unless subject attempts exit or reaches vehicle. Confirm visual first," a voice answered. "Copy. East corridor team moving." Mara slowed near a corner and lifted one hand. Slade stopped. Porter nearly ran into him. Ahead beyond the turn, a door clicked. Not a heavy slam. Not a hurried push. A careful click from someone trying not to be heard. Mara stepped to the corner and looked through the reflection in a framed safety poster mounted on the wall. Hollis stood 30 feet down the service corridor. White coat gone, tie loosened, phone in one hand, a hospital access card in the other. His face had lost the soft polish of authority. Without an audience, he looked smaller and meaner, a man stripped to the machinery beneath the manners. He was speaking into the phone. "No, the local copy is gone. The nurse has the drive. Slade is containing the perimeter, but he is moving too slowly because he still thinks in formal channels." He listened. His jaw tightened. "I said I can get out." Mara stepped around the corner. "No," she said. "You cannot." Hollis turned. For a fraction of a second, his mask came back by instinct. The attending physician, the man in charge, the man who expected rooms to shape themselves around his voice. "Nurse Ellison." Mara walked toward him. The corridor lights hummed overhead. Rain beat somewhere beyond the loading dock doors. Hollis's eyes flicked once to Slade behind her, then to the pocket of her scrub jacket. "You are making a mistake." "I have made several tonight," Mara said. "Believing your arrogance was ordinary was one of them." His mouth tightened. Slade moved to the side, giving his officers a clear line down the corridor. Two appeared behind Hollis near the loading doors. Another stepped from a side hall. No one raised a weapon. They did not need to. Hollis was boxed in by people who knew how not to rush. Hollis looked at Slade. "Vice Admiral, you have no authority to detain me in a civilian hospital." Slade's voice was cold. "Doctor, if authority is your concern, you should have chosen a quieter night to destroy federal evidence." Hollis laughed once. "Federal evidence? That is what she told you." Mara stopped 10 feet from him. "You knew who I was." Hollis looked at her. The laugh left his face. For the first time, he did not deny it. "You were not hard to recognize." A chill moved down Mara's back. "All these months." 11, Hollis said. "Almost 12. Why keep me here?" His eyes shifted. "Because you were useful where you were." "Useful?" "Contained," he said. "Invisible. Tired. Underpaid. Ignored." His gaze dropped briefly toward her leg, not exactly eager to draw attention. Slade took one step forward. Mara lifted a hand without looking at him. No. This was hers for another few seconds. Hollis saw the gesture and smiled faintly. "There she is." Mara said nothing. "The file never captured that part," he said. "Ghost Falcon, field medic, extraction specialist, systems interface training, high-stress command profile. That was what they wrote. They did not write how easily you could make men twice your size obey you by looking at them like they had already disappointed you." Mara's voice stayed even. "You helped them bury Glass Harbor. I helped stabilize survivors. You knew I was alive. I knew you were supposed to be dead. There is a difference. Not in classified medicine." The words struck harder than if he had shouted. Mara took one more step. "You let Caleb bleed on my table." Hollis's face twitched. "Voss was never supposed to reach your table, but he did, and when he did, you tried to slow the room down. I followed protocol. You followed a plan." His eyes sharpened. "You think you understand plans because someone gave you a call sign and put a weapon near you." Mara's hand closed at her side. Hollis leaned forward, voice dropping. "You have no idea what Glass Harbor was carrying. You never did. You were a medic with a rescue pack running through smoke trying to save men who had already become liabilities to people far above both of us." Slade's voice cut in. "Who gave the order?" Hollis did not look at him. Mara answered for him. "Rear Admiral Malcolm Strayed." That name hit Hollis visibly. There it was. The flinch. Small, fast, enough. Mara reached into her pocket and lifted the sealed drive just enough for him to see it. Caleb was more careful than your people thought. Hollis stared at the bag. Then his expression changed again. Not fear this time. Pity. That was the worst thing he could have chosen. "You think that drive saves you?" Mara's voice was quiet. "No. Then why are you holding it like a weapon? Because truth usually starts as evidence before anyone admits it is truth." Hollis shook his head. "You are still thinking like a nurse." "I am a nurse. You are a dead asset wearing scrubs." Slade moved fast then, but Mara moved faster. Not toward Hollis. Between them. Her eyes stayed on Hollis's face. "You tried to turn my hospital into a disposal site." "Your hospital," he said. "Yes." The word surprised even her with its weight. Hollis looked down the corridor past the officers toward the loading dock doors and the rain beyond. Mara saw the decision form. His right hand shifted toward his coat pocket. "Hands," Slade snapped. Hollis pulled something small and black from his pocket. Not a gun. A remote storage device. He threw it hard toward the floor drain near the wall. Mara lunged. Pain tore up her right side as the prosthetic caught half a beat late, but she drove forward anyway, shoulder hitting Hollis square in the chest. He slammed back against the wall. The device skittered across the floor, bounced off the drain lip, and spun. Porter dove and caught it under his palm before it dropped through the grate. Two officers seized Hollis. He fought then, not like a doctor, not like a man unused to violence. He twisted with training, clipped one officer's jaw with his elbow, and tried to turn his body through the gap between them. Mara was still close enough. She drove her forearm across his wrist and pinned it against the wall. Hollis sucked in a sharp breath. Their faces were inches apart. He smelled like antiseptic rain and fear. "You should have stayed invisible," he said. Mara pressed harder until the card in his hand fell to the floor. "You spent 11 months making sure I felt that way." His eyes burned into hers. It worked. Mara looked at him for one long second. Then she stepped back. "No," she said. "It made you careless." The officers forced Hollis to his knees and cuffed him. Slade picked up the access card with gloved fingers. Porter held the recovered device up. Encrypted. Still intact. Mara leaned one hand against the wall. The pain in her leg roared back now that motion had ended. She kept her face still, but Tessa, arriving at the far end of the corridor, saw it anyway. Tessa came to her side. "Sit down." No, that was not a suggestion. Mara almost smiled, but her breath caught before it formed. Hollis looked up from the floor. "You still do not understand. Straight is not the ceiling." Slade went still. Hollis smiled with blood at the corner of his mouth. He was the uniform they needed, not the hand. Mara looked at Slade. The vice admiral's face had gone hard in a way that belonged to older wars. Porter's tablet chimed. Everyone turned. Porter read the secure message. "Admiral." Slade did not look away from Hollis. "What preliminary read on the drive signature? It references Glass Harbor Command traffic post-mission medical suppression and a secondary index labeled Meridian." Hollis's smile faded. Mara heard the name and felt something open beneath the night. Meridian. Caleb had not mentioned that. Slade looked at Hollis. "What is Meridian?" Hollis shut his mouth. Mara crouched in front of him despite the pain, bringing herself level with his face. "Patients almost died tonight. Henry Cho, the woman in 412, Caleb on the table, Eddie in a closet. You do not get silence as dignity." Hollis looked at her for a long time. When he spoke, his voice had lost the attending physician. It had lost the traitor, too. What remained was a man who had served something so long that fear had become loyalty. Meridian is where they put the ones who did not fit the story. Slade's radio crackled before anyone answered. A voice from the recovery wing came through, strained but controlled. "Admiral Slade. This is Bay 3 Recovery. Caleb Voss is awake and asking for Mara. He says tell her the list is not dead." Mara slowly stood. Her leg shook once. Tessa moved close enough that only Mara could hear her. "I have you." Mara did not lean on her, but she did not move away either. Slade gave the order to remove Hollis. As the officers lifted him, Hollis looked back at Mara one last time. "You were never the target," he said. Mara held his gaze. "No," she answered. "I was the witness who survived." Hollis was taken down the corridor toward the secured elevator, his footsteps uneven between the men holding him. Mara, Slade, Tessa, and Porter stood in the service hall while the rain hammered the loading dock doors. The hospital had not gone silent. That was how Mara knew it was still alive. Phones rang. Wheels rolled. Monitors called out from distant rooms. Nurses answered. Patients breathed. Caleb was sitting half upright when Mara returned to recovery, pale beneath the low lights, one hand pressed against the blanket over his abdomen as if pain were something he could hold in place. The nurse at the desk stepped aside without being asked. Not because of Slade, not because of the officers. Because she had seen enough during the last hour to understand that Mara Ellison was no longer just passing through the night. The hospital had bent around her, resisted death because of her, and now every person who looked at her seemed to be weighing two versions of the same woman. The quiet agency nurse. The ghost with a call sign. Mara pulled the curtain closed behind her. Slade stayed inside this time. Tessa remained just outside, arms folded, eyes on the corridor. Porter stood near the recovery desk, working through the drive with a secure tablet that was not connected to anything Mercy Haven could touch. Caleb watched Mara's face as she approached. "You found Hollis." "We found enough." "Alive." "Yes. Too bad." Mara sat beside him. "Do not waste strength pretending you are joking." His mouth moved like it wanted to smile and failed. "He told you about Meridian. He said it is where they put the ones who did not fit the story." Caleb closed his eye. For several seconds only the monitor answered. Beep. 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 Then he opened his eye again, and whatever sedation had softened in him was gone. He looked tired enough to break, but fear had burned the fog away. "The Meridian list was never supposed to exist," he said. "Glass Harbor had survivors who were not entered into the official recovery chain. Not wounded, not missing, not dead. They were taken off book before anyone could ask why they were not in the report." Slade's voice was low. "How many?" Caleb looked at Mara. 7 confirmed. Mara felt Tessa shift beyond the curtain. 7. The number entered the room and stayed there. 7 men and women who had been erased because a clean story required fewer bodies. Mara leaned forward. "Names. I only saw fragments. Call signs, mostly. Sparrow 9, Bishop 2, Orchard, Hale Driver, a medic named Quinn. 2 I could not confirm." Caleb breathed through a flash of pain. "They were moved through something called Brackwater Station." Slade's jaw hardened. "That facility was decommissioned." Caleb's eye shifted to him. "You believe that because someone sent you a file with the word closed on it?" Slade did not answer. Mara knew that silence. It was the sound of a man watching an old certainty bleed out. "Where is Brackwater?" she asked. "Coastline north of Charleston. Marsh Road, private causeway, old federal quarantine site. The official map calls it a wildlife logistics annex." Porter stepped through the curtain, tablet in hand. "Admiral." Slade looked over. Porter kept his voice controlled, but his face had gone bloodless. "The drive has a dormant communication marker tied to something called Rook Channel." Mara's hand went still on the bed rail. Caleb saw it. "You remember." Mara stood slowly. Rook Channel. The name was not official. It had never belonged in any briefing deck. It was a field medic's last resort, built out of stolen minutes, broken encryption routines, and the belief that command channels could not always be trusted. Mara had designed it after a convoy ambush in Helmand when a medical evacuation request disappeared into clean static while wounded men bled under a burned truck. Rook Channel was never meant to send orders. It was meant to send proof. Slade looked at her. "What is it?" Mara kept her eyes on Porter's tablet. "A dead drop path, low bandwidth, burst transmission. Hard to trace if the sender knows how to stagger the packets." Porter stared at her. "You built this, I helped." Caleb's voice was rough. "No, you built it. We just carried it." Porter swallowed. It received a message 9 minutes ago. Recovery seemed to shrink around Mara. Play it. Porter hesitated. It is damaged. Play it. He tapped the screen. Static filled the small space, first thin and sharp. Beneath it came breathing wind and a voice that sounded like it had been dragged across gravel. Ghost Falcon. This is Sparrow 9. Brackwater is active. 7 alive. 2 critical. Varric knows you are moving. Window closes in 6 minutes. The recording cut. No one spoke. Then the monitor beside Caleb gave one clean, indifferent beep. Mara stared at the tablet. Sparrow 9. She knew that voice. Not well. Not from friendship. From triage. From a burned courtyard. From a woman refusing morphine because someone else needed it more. Sergeant Lena Price, communications specialist, left shoulder shattered, still holding a radio together with tape and one working hand. Mara had seen her loaded into a transport. Mara had read her name in the dead column 3 weeks later. Her fingers curled. Slade saw it. Mara. Who is Varric? The question was not loud. That made it worse. Slade's face changed in a way that told her he knew the name and wished he did not. Nolan Varric, he said. Deputy Director, National Intelligence Coordination. Civilian Authority. Liaison across military special access programs. Caleb closed his eye. That is the hand above Strayed. Mara looked at Slade. You knew him. I know of him. That is not what I asked. Slade accepted the correction with a small bow of the head. I sat across from him twice after Glass Harbor. He chaired one of the oversight reviews. Mara let the words settle. The man overseeing the review may have been the man controlling the crime. Tessa pushed the curtain open just enough to look inside. Mara. What hospital messaging system just pushed an evacuation advisory to 3 floors? Slade turned. We did not authorize that. Tessa's eyes stayed on Mara. It says storm damage has compromised upper-level power and non-critical patients should be moved to designated transfer corridors. Mara's face hardened. That is not an evacuation. That is a funnel. She walked out of the bay. The recovery desk was already lighting up with calls. Nurses spoke over one another. A transport tech rolled a wheelchair into the hall, then stopped when he saw Tessa's face. Down the corridor, a confused family member opened a door and asked if they were supposed to leave. Mara took the wall phone. Overhead page. Give me hospital-wide. The recovery nurse stared. Only command or administration can Tessa cut in. Give it to her. The nurse pressed the line through. A tone sounded through the building. Mara spoke into the receiver voice calm enough to be believed. This is Mara Ellison, Emergency Operations. Ignore all digital evacuation advisories until confirmed by voice from your charge nurse and unit physician. Do not move monitored patients into corridors. Do not disconnect oxygen telemetry pumps or ventilators unless there is active fire or direct structural threat. Charge nurses lock movement on your floors and confirm patient counts manually. She paused. Repeat. Do not follow digital evacuation instructions. She hung up. The calls changed pitch immediately. Panic did not disappear, but it stopped spreading. Slade stepped beside her. They wanted patients moving. They wanted staff distracted. Porter looked up from his tablet. Or they wanted you to respond where cameras could see you. Mara turned toward the ceiling dome camera in the corner. Its red status light was off. That should have been comforting. It was not. They know I am not staying here, she said. Tessa stared at her. You are leaving. Mara did not answer. Tessa's voice hardened. No. Tessa. No. You do not get to save the building and then walk out into whatever this is with a bad leg and a pocket full of evidence. Slade looked away, giving them something like privacy. Mara faced Tessa. If I stay, they keep using the hospital to pull me around. Every patient becomes leverage. They are patients, Mara, not leverage. To us, yes. Tessa's anger faltered because she understood too quickly. Mara continued. They know I will choose a patient in front of me over a threat I cannot see. That is how they nearly killed Henry Cho. That is how they set up the pharmacy cabinets. If I remain here, they will keep turning care into a trap." Tessa's jaw worked. Outside the recovery bay, rain scratched against the windows. "You are still limping," Tessa said. "I have been limping for 8 years. That does not make it fine." "No." For a moment, neither woman moved. Then Tessa looked down at Mara's shoes, soaked from the ER slick against tile. "Wait here." She left before Mara could object. Caleb called from behind the curtain. She always liked that Mara did not look back. Only when she is right. Slade's secure phone vibrated. He answered, listened, then walked a few feet away. His voice dropped, but Mara caught pieces. "Perimeter. Federal notification. No local dispatch. Internal compromise." When he ended the call, his face had turned to stone. "We cannot move the drive through standard federal channels," he said. "Varick's office was alerted to the hospital incident 12 minutes ago." Mara almost laughed. 12 minutes. 6 minutes to a closing window. 12 minutes for the enemy to be notified by the system meant to stop him. "Then we do not use standard channels." Porter looked at her. "Rook channel. It was built for proof, not large files. The drive is too big. We do not send the drive. We send the index authentication keys and enough fragments to prove the archive exists." Porter blinked. "That would not be admissible chain." Mara looked at him. "Admissible can come later. Alive comes first." Slade nodded once. "Do it." Porter moved to the recovery desk and began building the burst packet on the secure tablet. His fingers shook once, then steadied. Mara watched the hallway, counting exits, staff movement, camera angles, voices. Tessa returned carrying a hospital duffel. She shoved it against Mara's chest. Spare scrub jacket, dry socks, compression wrap, and shoes from Lost and Found that might actually grip wet concrete. Mara looked at the bag. "Tessa, there is also a small trauma kit, 2 saline flushes, chest seals, gauze tape shears, and 3 protein bars that taste like chalk." Mara's throat tightened. Tessa kept her voice practical because anything else would have broken the room. "I checked your socket wrap from the supply note you left in the medication room last month." Mara looked up. "You saw that I am charge nurse. I see everything." For 1 second, the hospital noise fell away. Tessa stepped closer. "You come back with that leg still attached and whatever truth you are dragging behind you." Mara nodded. No promise. Tessa knew better than to ask for one. Mara changed in a staff washroom while Slade's officers secured the corridor. Dry socks, fresh wrap. The shoes were half a size too large, but they gripped the floor. She tightened the strap around the prosthetic socket until the pain sharpened into something useful. When she came out, the drive was sealed inside a reinforced evidence pouch. Porter had completed the burst packet. "Ready," he said. Mara took the tablet. The Rook channel interface was crude, a black screen with a blinking cursor and a field code line that looked like it belonged to another century. Her hands remembered faster than thought. She entered the phrase. Not a password. A memory. Black weather, red smoke, 3 lights home. The screen paused. Then text appeared. Recipient nodes active. Mara looked at Caleb through the open curtain. He watched from the bed, eyes bright with fever and pain. "Send it," he said. Mara pressed transmit. The screen blinked once, twice. Packet away. No celebration followed. No swelling music. No clean feeling of victory. Somewhere in a system outside Varick's reach, or maybe just outside his timing proof, had begun to move. Slade spoke into his radio. "Convoy team prepare medical extraction route through ambulance tunnel. No sirens, no marked vehicles. We move in 60 seconds. Mara turned to Tessa. "Keep Henry Cho on continuous monitoring with manual checks until lab confirms 2 stable levels. Cabinet 7 remains locked. No one accepts a digital medication order without voice confirmation from pharmacy. Tessa crossed her arms. You are still giving orders. You still listening. For now. A voice from the hall called Tessa away. She looked once at Mara, then went back into the living machinery of the hospital. Mara stepped into Caleb's bay one last time. He was fading again, eyelids heavy, but he forced them open. Brackwater has water on 3 sides, he said. Main gate is a lie. Service road north side floods at high tide, but there is an old ambulance entry from when it was a quarantine station. Mara looked at Slade. He nodded to Porter, who began entering notes. Caleb reached weakly toward Mara. This time she took his hand. His grip was colder than she liked. I am sorry I brought them here. You brought a warning. I brought a war. Mara looked at the monitor, then back at him. The war was already here. You just made it visible. His eye closed. They said you were dead. Mara's voice lowered. I was for a while. He opened his eye again. No. You were waiting. Mara did not answer. He did not need one. She released his hand and stepped back. The ambulance tunnel beneath Mercy Haven smelled of diesel, rainwater, and concrete. The ceiling lights buzzed overhead, reflected in puddles left by incoming rigs. Slade's convoy waited with engines low, not the full line that had arrived like thunder, but 3 black SUVs and 1 medical transport vehicle stripped of markings. Officers moved with quiet purpose. No one spoke more than necessary. Weapons stayed hidden, but readiness lived in every shoulder. Mara climbed into the rear seat of the lead SUV. Slade took the seat beside her. Porter sat forward with the tablet. Another officer drove. The doors closed. For the first time in hours, the hospital noise disappeared. The silence inside the vehicle felt wrong. Mara looked through the tinted rear window as Mercy Haven receded behind them. The building glowed against the storm glass and concrete and fragile light. Inside, people were still fighting the smaller battles. A nurse reading a label twice. A doctor listening before ordering. A patient sleeping because someone had caught a number that lied. Her hospital. The words had come out in the corridor before she had chosen them. Now they stayed. Slade watched her from the side. You should not have had to come back into this. Mara kept her eyes on the hospital until rain erased it. I never left it. The driver took the service road toward the waterfront, avoiding main streets. Charleston blurred past in wet reflections. Closed storefronts, flooded gutters, dark church steeples, palmetto trees thrashing in the wind. Porter's tablet chimed. Rook Channel acknowledgement, he said. Mara turned. From who Porter read the screen. Node unknown. Message is text only. He handed it back. Mara looked down. Ghost Falcon confirmed. Proof received. Brackwater window narrowing. Varick moving clean team. Sparrow 9 alive. 2 critical. Bring blood. Bring blood. Mara closed her eyes. Not because she was afraid of blood, because she knew exactly what kind of person sent that message. Someone with wounded people nearby. Someone counting supplies. Someone trying to make terror sound like logistics. Slade spoke to the driver. Medical transport has blood. The officer in the front passenger seat answered. 2 units, O-negative field plasma trauma packs. Not enough, Mara said. Slade looked at her. For 7 alive, 2 critical and unknown injuries. Not enough. He got on the radio. Secondary medical team reroute to fallback point Delta. Bring additional blood products, warming equipment, portable suction airway kits, and manual monitors. No networked devices. A response came through. Copy. The SUV turned off the main road and headed north along a darker stretch of coast. Houses thinned. Streetlights grew farther apart. The storm pressed closer to the windows. Mara opened the trauma kit Tessa had packed. Gauze, tape, shears, chest seals, saline flushes, protein bars. At the bottom was a folded note written on a medication label. "You are not invisible." Mara stared at it for a moment. Then she folded it back exactly as it had been and placed it inside her breast pocket beside the sealed drive. Slade saw the movement, but said nothing. Porter pulled up a map on the isolated device. Brackwater Station is 4 miles ahead. Official access road ends at a locked federal gate. Satellite shows 2 buildings, 1 dock, 1 maintenance structure, and what looks like a buried utility line running west. Mara leaned forward. "Where is the old ambulance entry?" Porter zoomed. "There is no marked entry. Look for a covered turnaround near the north wall. Quarantine stations needed discreet movement for infected patients before public roads were expanded." Porter shifted the map. There. A narrow service lane appeared beneath tree cover half swallowed by marsh. Slade studied it. "That entrance may be watched." "All entrances are watched," Mara said. "That one may be forgotten." The radio cracked. "Lead, this is rear vehicle. We have headlights 2 miles back. No profile match holding distance." Slade's eyes hardened. "Do not engage on open road. Confirm tail." Mara looked through the rear window. The world behind them was rain darkness and distant light. Varric was moving. "Clean team." That phrase had its own temperature. Men sent not to fight a battle but to erase evidence that a battle had happened. Porter's tablet chimed again. He read the message and went still. What Slade asked. Porter looked at Mara. Rook Channel received another burst. Audio this time. "Play it." Static snapped through the vehicle speakers. Then Sparrow 9's voice returned weaker, now barely above breath. "Ghost Falcon, if you are hearing this, do not trust the south gate. They moved the criticals below ground. We have 1 child." The audio distorted. Mara's head lifted. Slade's face changed. "A child." The voice fought through static again. "Not ours. Witness protection transfer. Varric buried the convoy here after the leak. She has a fever. We cannot move her twice." The transmission died. Rain hammered the roof of the SUV. For a moment no one breathed normally. Mara looked at the dark road ahead. 7 erased survivors. 2 critical. 1 child. A hospital behind her. A detention site ahead. A man with enough power to turn records into graves. Slade asked the question carefully. "Can you do this?" Mara checked the trauma kit again, though she already knew every item inside. She tightened the wrap at her thigh. The prosthetic bit into her skin, sharp and grounding. "No." Slade looked at her. Mara lifted her eyes to the road. "But I can start." The convoy lights went dark. The SUVs rolled forward into the marsh road, black against black engines low beneath the storm. Ahead, beyond a line of wind-bent trees, Brackwater Station appeared as a shape, without mercy. Concrete walls rising from the rain. 1 pale security light turning slowly over the gate like an eye searching for ghosts. Mara touched the note in her pocket. "You are not invisible." Then she opened the door before the vehicle had fully stopped and stepped out into the rain. Mara touched the sealed drive in her pocket. Then she turned toward recovery. "Take me to Caleb."